Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Neville and welcome to Selective Imagery. Welcome to Thanks for the Memories, Part 24, the 1899 Magazine Cyclone No. 5. Hello everyone, this is Jeff Neville for Selective Imagery. This video is part 24 of a series of videos that I do titled Thanks for the Memories. And we talk real cameras on this show. And I'll let you see the whole shirt just so you can have a laugh. Okay, so now you know the content here. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about a camera that was produced, but I don't think it was actually readily available until it was produced in 1898. I think it was advertised more to the public in 1899. Mine has a patent date in it, two patent dates, one of 1898 and one of 1899, and it is a camera made by the Western Manufacturing Company of Chicago, Illinois, and it was called a Magazine Cyclone No. 5, and it was a box form falling plate camera, of which I had never heard of before until I actually got it. And it was advertised to be able to take 12 4x5 pictures on what would be dry plates at the time in that era quickly. 12 shots in 12 seconds. That's how it was advertised. And I'll show you the camera overall first, and then I'm going to hold up an advertisement so I can explain how it works a little bit better on the inside, because I can't really show you anything much on the inside that you're going to be able to see very well. But this is the camera, and like I said, it is a box, obviously a box type camera. Okay, so that's the front view. On the top you have the handle, you have an area to look through, okay, for when you're taking shots in this orientation. This little round disc right here would have the name of the company on it, and either it got rubbed off and or it had another disc that was glued on top of it. I'm not sure which, so I am looking into that. One side basically just had the tripod socket over here. Other side allowed you to rotate the camera in a different orientation for taking the image. It had a shutter release button, and you also had a bulb type cable release that had a special threaded attachment that would screw on to the front of this. It was optional. I do not have it on this camera, and even though this is called a knob over here, which theoretically it is because you turn it, this is what you do to drop the plates down. Like I said, they call it a falling plate camera. And for the back, you do have a release here. You lift this up, and I'll do that now, and we'll talk about things more as we go. And then you can grab this and open it up, and you can see, the patent dates. Okay, and these are the plates, the plate holders. It's supposed to be able to facilitate 12. I only have 8 that came with this camera. And then you have, excuse me, the bottom that also drops down to remove the plates after you've taken the pictures. And like I said, some things I can show you, some things are a little bit harder to show you. So let me show you a picture of the camera, and then we'll get back to looking at the actual camera itself. Hopefully I'll be able to show this in a way, and I'm going to block my face, I'm sure, here a little bit, because I got to move this close enough for you to be able to see it. Okay. So this is I want you to focus on this picture here. This is a cutaway view. So here's where your bulb would attach, right here. Your shutter button is there. One of your viewfinders is here. This is the lever. Let me get this on here a little better. That's the lever for advancing the plates. The plates stand up and down against the back of the box. When you drop the door, you see the last plate out of the 12. And after you take a picture, you turn this knob, what they call a knob, up here, and it makes the plate fall down to the base of the camera. And then you have your next unexposed camera plate behind it. And that's how theoretically you're supposed to be able to take 12 pictures in 12 seconds. I'm not sure that that's possible, but you know, in advertising, everything is true until you prove it wrong, I guess, right? But you could preload the plates. You would preload the plates ahead of time. You would take out these plate holders. You would get some dry plates, and you would have to be in a dark room, not a dark room. You'd have to be in a dark room environment with just the red light on. Load those plates in to the holders. Install the holders into the back of the camera, where you would stand them up vertically. And I'll get back to the dropping the door down. You can see tension spring in here. See it? And that makes this piece here, puts this under pressure all the time. So once you load in the plates and you flip this piece up, it has the pressure from those springs against that last plate in the stack. And when the time comes where you want to gain access to get in here to drop the bottom of the camera out to remove the used plates, you have to squeeze in both sides of this metal and swing this down towards you. And you can see how you have these little ears with a little notch in them. Well, this part of the spring will sit in the notch, and it'll stay where it's laying flat. That allows you to get your hands in there to move a couple other mechanical pieces that allow you to drop the bottom of the camera, the door out, and remove the used plates from the camera body. Then you close the bottom door. Then you load reload your plates onto the plate holders. Stack them back in. You got to do all this in a dark room. Stack them all back in, and then, you know, tension this back up again to put pressure on it. Okay, so that's how that works. And in a nutshell. Now I only have, like I said, 8 plate holders that came with this. It normally would have 12. It's something that's hard to find. I did go on the internet, and there are groups of people that own this camera along with other models. This is the model 5, which does 4x5. Has 4x5 plates in it. Then you have a Model 4 that does 3.5 by 4.25. This model was $10 in its day. Cost $10. Now we'll get into what's on the front. You have this. This is where your image is coming through, and you have a lever here, and you could turn this lever, and it basically gives you different. Consider it different lens openings, like changing your f-stop. Okay, fully open, a little smaller. That mode, it blocks it off. When it's like this and you don't see a hole at all, then you cannot actuate. It prevents you from actually actuating the shutter. That way you don't accidentally take a picture. So that's a neat feature. And like I said, you've got multiple openings. Okay, you got this one here. You got this one here. And you got this one wide open. And if I think I got it stuck in between a couple different openings here. Okay. That one's wide open, and I'll try to angle so you can see things while I actuate the. See how that opened up? That's going right to the lens in the back, which is on a different wooden board. Okay, this front piece comes off. Exposes the shutter mechanism and things that you might have to adjust or clean. So that's basically a time mode. Okay, you're in time mode now. You have to hit the shutter again to get out of it. And this little arrow right here, this little lever, makes it so it's either time mode or, if I rotate it up, boy, this is hard to do when you're working from behind. I'm going to have to move it this way. When you have it in the upwards position, you're no longer in time mode, you're in instantaneous mode. Okay, so those are your two modes, and believe me, when you're using dry plates, you're going to be in time mode more often than not, even on a very sunny day, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So yeah, it did not functionally work when I got it, but I did repair it, and now it works fine. So this is a really nice, super nice example of the leatherette. The leather is like in mint condition. And it's really nice. And like I said, you can view down from the top. Okay, for your portrait mode, you can rotate the camera this way. Look down through this one for more of a landscape mode. You got the tripod sockets that facilitate you mounting the camera in either orientation. And it had an achromatic meniscus lens that's behind what they call a self-aiming shutter, self-arming shutter. So it automatically, you don't have to cock the shutter. It automatically resets and it's ready for the next shot. And let's see, the Western Manufacturing Company merged in 1899 to form the Rochester Optical and Manufacturing Company. They continued making this camera under new ownership, which eventually would go on to become Kodak. So a little discussion on, I'm going to let you hear a plate drop. So pretend I took a picture, and then I'm going to pull out, they call it a knob, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it does turn. But you have to pull that ring out, and then when you turn it, let's see if you hear the noise. Okay, that little sound was the plate falling down to the bottom of the camera. Now I'm sure there might have been some of the glass plates cracked, maybe from falling. I don't know, but very, very interesting design, and it did take me a while to figure out how the plates got put in, because they were already installed, and I think they were all laying flat on the bottom, and I was trying to figure out that tension mechanism and how the bottom opened up and everything, and very interesting design, very interesting how they did it. So we'll talk a little bit about, it's pretty much it for the camera. We'll talk a little about dry plates, dry plate photography, and that got developed by a gentleman in Britain who was a physician, Dr. Richard Maddox, in 1871. Now, the process in making a dry plate was that you had to have a piece of glass, obviously, that was polished, cleaned and polished very, very well. And then they would create a emulsion, liquid emulsion mix, which was a combination of warm gelatin with silver bromide, which is a light sensitive chemical. And that was poured onto the glass, and they would kind of move the glass around to make sure it had a nice thin, even coat on it. And then the plates were left to dry. And this was all in a dark room. This was, you can't do it out in the light. And once they were stable, then they would package them and put them in storage or ship them. And this was like a super improvement in camera photography to have dry plates versus the wet plate process, which was really, really time consuming. And it was obviously very dangerous. I mean, there were photographers that died from explosions and fires from the chemicals that were used to develop the wet plate process, and it just wasn't very safe. And you had to basically bring a whole darkroom with you and a whole batch of chemicals. Now, the thing is with that too, was you only had, from the time when you did wet plate technology, by the time you poured the solution on the plate and got it in your camera and went out to take the picture, you had 15 minutes from the time you poured it to the time you had developed it. So basically, you'd have people standing there or sitting there or waiting, posing for an image, and you would probably have some of these plates, maybe you pour a couple at a time, but you had to take a few pictures and then you had to disappear for a while. You had to process them. You only had 15 minutes. The dry plate technology was fantastic. As long as you unloaded those plates in a dark room, and put them in a some kind of proper storage container that was light tight, you could develop them whenever you got around to it. You didn't have to do it right away. You could bring it back to your business or your home or whatever you had set up, and then you could basically process them and develop them all at once, the whole batch from the day at once. And you couldn't do that with the wet plate process. So it was really a big deal. You didn't have to bring chemistry with you. You didn't have, you had to. Oh, what a game! That was true. That was truly in the day a true game changer. Now, eventually they did some other process to dry plates to improve them so that they would allow. Well, they always allowed shorter exposure times. Typically on a sunny day, I think at f8 you'd be shooting for 2 seconds typically. If you were in a good sunny area, if you were in the shade, it could take a couple minutes to do the exposure. But when you were doing wet plate technology, it was a lot longer. It could be 30 seconds to several minutes, and you had that time constraint where you had to get into your mobile darkroom and process those things right away. There are several companies that make dry plates today. You can go online and find out who they are. One of them is a company called Zebra. They do make 4x5 dry plates that would fit into this camera. They sell their product direct and also through Etsy. The plates, when I looked at Etsy, they were selling 4x5 plates, boxed, for a package of 10 was like $56. And the ISO is very low on these. You're talking, you want low ISO? These ISOs are like ISO 2 to 3. So, like I said, exposure times on a sunny day, like at f8 would be 2 seconds typical, but it would be several minutes potentially in a deep shade. So you have to meter your scene at ISO 2 or 3, or you have to experiment, which could, be costly, because doing this stuff is not cheap by any means. It's at all. Developing uses standard developers that are out there that you can get today, time varying between 4 to 10 minutes, when they're at 70 degrees temperature, depending on the developer. And of course, we're talking all black and white, no color, all black and white. You got to be working in a dark room with a safe light, and you got to be using gentle agitation to develop them. And like I said, there are websites or general internet searches you could do to find out more about dry plate technology, get you in the right direction, or simply just go to zebadryplates.com and they'll give you full instructions on how to use their products, their dry plate products. So imagine an ISO of 2 to 3, obviously not a camera for bird photography or anything moving for that matter. But in the 1800s into the early 1900s, cameras were used predominantly for portraits, or Ansel Adams, using them for fantastic landscape images, obviously. But that due to the limitations of the technology at the time, that was kind of the only 2 types of photographs you could do. And there's a reason when you look at old, maybe you're lucky, from your great-great-grandparents or your grandparents, they have some old photographs that are on glass. There was a reason that hardly anybody ever smiled in those pictures, because like I said, back when it was the wet plate technology, you're developing your exposure time could be 30 seconds or longer. People couldn't hold a smile for 30 seconds. They weren't going to sit there like this for 30 seconds. It just wasn't going to work. So really, that's why no one really smiles in any of those pictures now. I'm assuming that with the shorter exposure times of the dry plates, the smiles became more prevalent because you could be doing it just for 2 seconds or more if you have the right light, and you'd be done. So most people can hold a smile for a couple seconds. But that's pretty much it. It's a very, very interesting camera from a very, very interesting time, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll be doing more on other cameras down the road. And as I always say, enjoy life, capture some of it. Go out there and get some wonderful pictures, no matter what kind of gear you use, film, digital, dry plate technology. Some out there still do wet plate, and they make a living taking unique images with wet plate photography, and people will pay the money to have a glass image in their home from a process that was used in the 1800s. So there are people that do it. There are people on YouTube that you can look up that talk about the process and how they do it and whatnot. So good for them. Good for them. Keep history alive. So once again, take care. We'll see you next time.